Good morning. Thank you for joining us for our Sunday Dharma service on this bright but very cloudy West LA weather here. My name is Galen Kobayashi. I'm the temple president here at West LA, and I just wanted to remind everyone that after this service, we're having our Dharma reflection session immediately following the service. And also, I just want to remind everyone that before services, we also have a happy half hour where we had a great discussion this morning. So if you want to join in for that, definitely sign into Zoom half an hour early and come join us for that. And we would love to see everyone's faces as well. So if you want to turn on your cameras at any point during the service, we would love to see everyone who's joining us today. With that, I'd like to start service with the ringing of the kancho, and then we're chanting Jusege.
Shubhangyo 書天にし、人力縁内語、聖無祭道、少女三苦名、交際集約難、回避知恵見、滅死根も案、永足小悪道、通達伝修門、高僧上満足、いよろ実法、日月修十期、天候音符言、一種解放道、公正功徳法、上大集中、母子飼育、供養一切部、無足習得本、元年出場満、得意三愛用、名物無下知、通達未不詳、願悪営利、投資最小損、志願や国家、大戦を感動、国書天人、東神妙見、ナマンダブ、ナマンダブ、ナマンダブ、ナマンダブ、ナマンダブ、ナマンダブ、がにしくどく、平等正祭、道本も大心、往生安楽。ナマンダツナマンダツナマンダツナマンダツナマンダツナマンダツナマンダツ。
We'll now have the reading of Three Treasures by Reverend Takata.
Okay, please join me in reading the Three Treasures. Hard it is to receive a human form. Now we have received it. Difficult is it to hear the Buddha Dharma. Now we hear it. If we do not receive awakening in this life, in what life shall we do so? Let us reverently take refuge together in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in the Buddha. together with all beings, may we attain the great way of enlightenment, awakening to the supreme intent of the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. Together with all beings, may we enter the storehouse of Dharma, acquiring wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in the Sangha. Together with all beings, may we become united as a great assembly, being free of all bondage. Hard is it to encounter the supreme, profound, and wondrous Dharma, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Now we are able to hear and receive it. Let us truly understand the true intent of the Tathagata. 三期右衛門、人参受けがたし、今すでに浮く。仏法聞きがたし、今すでに聞く。好み根性に向かってどせずんば、さらにいずれの章に向かってか好みをどせん。大衆もろともに指針に三方に帰依し立て祀るべし。自ら仏に帰依し立て祀る。まさに願わくは主情とともに大道を体現して無常意を起こさん。自ら法に帰依し立て祀る。まさに願わくは主情とともに深く共造に入りて知恵海のごとくならん。自ら僧に帰依し立て祀る。まさに願わくは主情とともに大衆を通りして一切無下ならん。無常人人未明の法は百千万号にも愛用ことかたし、我今検問し受持することを得たり、願わくは如来の真実義を下し立て祀らん。何万ダブス、何万ダブス、何万ダブス、何万ダブス。
We will now have the Dharma message from Reverend Umezu.
Please join me with hands together as I read words written by Venerable Shinran, the founder of our tradition. Nagarjuna Bodhisattva reveals the hardship of the land route of difficult practice and leads us to have joy for the virtues of the Tathagata, which is the pleasantness of the water route of easy practice. Namandabts, namandab, namandabts. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today here at West Los Angeles to listen to the Buddha Dharma. And for anyone that might be joining us for the first time today, thank you so much for joining us, and we're always happy to see new faces. The passage that I have just shared can be found in Venerable Shinran's Shoshin Nembutsuge, which we just chanted during our observance of Honko a few weeks ago. In this passage, Venerable Shinran is praising the great Buddhist master and philosopher Nagarjuna Bodhisattva and his revealing of the easy practice, which is the recitation of Namo Amida Butsu. And this is likened to traveling a far distance in a boat, compared to a practice which is arduous and difficult, like traversing a long distance over land. Nagarjuna Bodhisattva lived about 1800 years ago. So during Nagarjuna Bodhisattva's time, this was probably an appropriate and relatable simile. Today, I think relatively few of us travel by boat, unless you're taking a ferry or maybe going on a cruise. More people today travel by airplane or maybe even perhaps train. And when it comes to walking long distances, I think that some of us might walk long distances on hikes for fun, but not necessarily to go anywhere in particular. And with modern shoe technology and hiking equipment, we can walk further more comfortably. In addition, unless we purposely, go out into nature or somewhere that's a route that's, not around civilization, when we go for a walk, there are many places for us to stop and rest safely along the way. So when we think about walking a long distance over land today, maybe it doesn't sound so difficult or scary. Recently, I have started reading the book Roots by Alex Haley. Maybe some of you have read the book, or you've seen the TV miniseries that came out in the 70s, or I've heard that a newer version even came out about 7 years ago. For those of you who aren't familiar with the story, Roots follows several generations of a family whose roots come from a man named Kunta Kinte, who was kidnapped from his village in the Gambia and made into a slave in the 18th century. In the first several chapters of this book, we follow Kunta Kinte growing up in his village. And the author gives a very vivid image of the description of how the people lived. And there were some parts that really made me imagine how difficult life was for people who had to travel long distances, on land and travel difficult paths to get to different places. It reminded me of the conditions that Nagarjuna Bodhisattva was probably trying to describe in his imagery of the difficult path. In the book, Kunta wanted to go on a trip to visit friends in another village that was described as a 3 days walk away. In order to get there, he had to ask an elder how to get to where he wanted to go. And he had to be shown a map of how to get there by someone drawing it in the dirt for him. After it was drawn in the dirt, Kunta Kinte himself, had to draw it over and over and over again until he was able to memorize it. And he had to truly memorize it because they didn't have any kind of, pre-printed guides. There was no Thomas guide, there was no GPS. So not only did he have to know the route, but he had to know what landmarks he would pass, such as, trees, streams, different animal habitats. And he had to know, if he would be passing through areas such as tall grass, plains, forests, etc. He also needed to know where it was safe to stop for water and to eat and nap. If he didn't memorize all these things perfectly, he could get lost, or he could be attacked by animals, or possibly even kidnapped by slave traders. So he was not even able to begin his trip until he really understood where he was going and the path to get there. Once he understood where he was going and the proper path for him to take, then he was able to set out on his journey. And when he was on his journey, even though he knew in his head where he was going, he still needed to pay close attention to the environment around him, right? On top of that, at that time, not all the people in his village had sandals or shoes. So Kunta did not have shoes or sandals and had to make his trek barefoot. After walking for a while, his feet would start to bleed, and he would only be able to tend to them when it was safe to do so. Reading about Kunta Kinte's adventures and how the author vividly described his exciting and yet dangerous trip, I had a new appreciation for what Nagarjuna Bodhisattva meant when he talked about the hardship on the overland path. Can you imagine making the journey that Kunta Kinte made to see his friends? So I was curious, so I looked it up. This temple, West LA, is about 105 miles to Bakersfield, which is just over the ridge route, at the southern part of Central California. Google Maps says that it would take about 2 days that doesn't include resting, right? It would take about 2 days to walk there. So taking into consideration, resting for food, napping, sleeping, this is about a 3 days walk, I think, maybe even more. So can you imagine walking 100 miles to go visit friends in Bakersfield? I know that I definitely couldn't do it. Even in today's conditions, even if I had the most comfortable shoes and, was able to stop every so many miles, I don't think I could do it. But I think this is what Nagarjuna Bodhisattva was comparing the difficult path of practice with. Another feature of the life and village of Kunta Kinte that was described in the book was that every village had a wise man and historian called a griot. The griot was responsible for knowing the history of the whole village for hundreds of years back, for generations. The griot was especially trained to do this since childhood. Can you imagine being responsible for learning all this knowledge and wisdom to be able to pass it on accurately to others that come after you? This also made me think about the difficult practice that Nagarjuna Bodhisattva and Venerable Shinran taught about. In the path of difficult practice, it is said that one must do many practices to awaken to the different levels of wisdom. And one must awaken to certain levels before they can go on to the next set of practices. I think for me, this is like the story of the griot needing to practice and study from a young age to retain all the knowledge of the village so that one day they can pass it forward to the next generations. Fortunately for us, because Nagarjuna Bodhisattva understood that there would be people who couldn't do all of these difficult practices, he taught the easy practice, which is to recite the name of Namo Amida Buddha. Based on the teachings of the seven masters, Venerable Shinran clarified that this practice of reciting the name of Namo Amida Buddha is not just about rote reciting the name, but about hearing the name and hearing how the name came to be. For the sake of all suffering beings, people, animals, insects, plants, things, etc. As a bodhisattva named Dharmakara, the Buddha practiced and practiced and practiced and lived and suffered life after life after life until they became the unhindered Buddha whose name became the practice itself. All of the wisdom and virtues needed for someone to be guided by the Buddha Dharma and become a Buddha themselves are embodied in the name. It is the name. Because of this, we only need to hear the name and recite the name to be able to encounter and receive the teachings and its virtues as we are. I would like to clarify that to hear doesn't just mean to hear with our ears. It means to hear with all of our senses. And it doesn't mean to just passively hear, but to actively listen to the Buddha's heart, the Buddha's teaching, the Buddha's virtues. I think for many of us, we might think of listening or hearing as a passive practice, right? Oh, all I have to do is hear? That doesn't sound like much, right? However, hearing or listening, if we do it correctly, is actually very active. Have you ever heard of the term active listening? So although we say, main practice for us in Jodo Shinshu is to hear or to actively listen, active listening is also important in our everyday life. And so it is talked about in the fields of communication and psychology. In those fields, active listening is described as a way of listening that involves full attention to what is being said for the primary purpose of understanding the speaker. Active listening is a way of listening that involves full attention to what is being said for the primary purpose of understanding the speaker. In our everyday lives, when we are talking to other people, are we really listening to what the other person is saying? Or are we only half-heartedly listening? I know that there are many times when I think that I am engaged in a conversation, but then I realize, oh, what they said reminds me of this, and then my mind drifts onto that other topic. Then I realize I'm not really listening anymore. Or I think that what I heard, I think that I heard what was said to me, but then I realize later I cannot repeat what I was told. I wasn't really listening. There are also times that I'm listening to someone, but then I disagree with something they said. So I don't listen as earnestly, and I just want to share my own opinion, right? So in all of these examples, I think I am listening, but I realize that I am not listening with the primary purpose of understanding the speaker. When we listen to Namo Amida Buddha, we should actively listen with the primary purpose of understanding the speaker, who is Amida Buddha. Amida Buddha, with the heart of being determined to rescue each and every one of us from our suffering, is always telling us through the vow that we should listen to the virtues of Buddha come to us, that is coming to us in the form of the name Namo Amida Buddha. And we should do this because our three poisons are constantly inside of us, constantly, living in us, causing us as individuals and those around us, causing all of us harm and suffering. Namo Amida Buddha is the teaching of impermanence. It is the teaching of interconnectedness and codependent origination. It is the teaching of not being extreme in either direction. It is the teaching that we are all embraced as we are, and that all of our lives are equally valuable. So, because Dharmakara completed all these bodhisattva practices and became this Buddha name for the benefit of all of us, all the merits and virtues and teachings and practice are embodied in this name. This teaching, practice, and enlightenment that is the wisdom of truth is directing itself to us as the name Namo Amida Buddha, so that all we need to do is hear or actively listen to it. This is the easy path that has been given to us. Nagarjuna Bodhisattva described this path as being like taking the pleasurable path of being on a water route. Again, most of us probably don't ride on boats these days, but being able to receive this teaching through active listening is like getting on an airplane and relying on the airplane to take us to our destination. We don't really have to do any strenuous, difficult work. We only need to have joy and appreciation for all that went into creating the possibility for us to take the airplane. In this same way, we recite and hear Namo Amida Buddha. We only need to continue to listen to Buddha's teaching, practice, and enlightenment that is Namo Amida Buddha, Namo Amida Butsu, as an expression of joy and appreciation for this easy path of hearing that has been given to us. There is nothing else that we need to worry about. This is the easy path that Nagarjuna Bodhisattva revealed for us, so that we do not need to worry or suffer any more than we already do. Because of this path, we do not need to practice, just like Kunta Kinte had to memorize the map. We do not have to worry about our safety on our journey to our destination. We do not need to be a griya to have access to the wisdom of the Buddha. We only need to continue to actively listen to the heart and mind of Namo Amida Buddha that sincerely wishes for all of us to be guided by the Buddha Dharma, and for each of us to become a Buddha ourselves. As we each continue our journeys on our respective Dharma paths, I hope that we can continue to keep our hearts, minds, and ears open to Namo Amida Buddha's compassionate universal vow. And I hope that joy and appreciation for this easy path that has been already given to us can be stirred within each of our hearts. Thank you very much for listening to the Buddha Dharma Nembutsu teaching with us today. I would like to invite you to please join me with hands together again as I reread the words of Venerable Shinran. Nagarjuna Bodhisattva reveals the hardship of the land route of difficult practice and leads us to have joy for the virtues of Tathagata, which is the pleasantness of the path or the water route of easy practice. Namandapts, 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 nam.
Thank you, Reverend Umezu, for your Dharma message this morning. Next, we will have the reading of Rogemon.
Please join me in reading the Ryogemon by Master Renyo. We rely upon Amida Buddha with our whole heart for the enlightenment in the life to come, abstaining from all sundry practices and teachings, and giving up the trust in our imperfect view. There is no doubt that the assurance of enlightenment comes at the very moment we entrust, and we recite the Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, in joy and gratitude for the Buddha's compassion. We also acknowledge gratefully the benign benevolence of our founder and succeeding masters who have led us to live in this profound teaching, and we do now endeavor to follow throughout our lives the way laid down for us. 両下出言もろもろの道行脱臭自力の心を振り捨てて一心に阿弥陀如来我らが今度の一大事の御所御助け総来と頼み申して候頼む一年の時往生一条御助け事情と存じこの上の称名は言放射と存じ喜び申し候この恩ことあり弔問申し分け候ことご解散承認ご出世のご恩次第僧正の全錦の朝からざるご関係のご恩とありがたく存じ候この上は定めおかせらるる恩をきて一号限り守り申すべく候何万ダウス何万ダウス何万ダウス何万ダウス
Now we will move on to announcements. Let's see here. The first, next week, we have our Nirvana Day service. That's on February 12th at 10 a.m. And our guest speaker is Reverend John Turner, and he's the Associate Minister at OCBC, Orange County Buddhist Church. And we have a couple of classes. The next one is What is Jodo Shinshu Teaching? And that's on Wednesdays from 7 to 8 p.m., and that's via Zoom. The next class is February 8th Amida Buddha's Primal Vow. And this is led by Reverend Takata. And the suggested donation for that is $50. The Saturday Shoshinge Nembutsuge class, the next session on that one is February 11th. And that's also led by Reverend Takata. The next class is Tradition of Daily Life of Jodo Shinshu. There's two classes, February 15th and the 16th. And that's via Zoom, and that is led by Reverend Furumoto, the resident minister at Shenshin Buddhist Temple. And the suggested donation for that is $20. Jodo Shinshu, the true teaching of the way, of the Pure Land Way, sorry. What is the Pure Land? That class is, the next class is February 23rd from 7 to 8 p.m. And this is in person only here at the temple. And that is led by Reverend Mas Kodani. He's the Minister Emeritus from Buddhist Churches of America. And then lastly, we have Buddhism Beyond Mindfulness. The second class of that one is on February 11th, and that is led by Reverend Umezu. And this class is geared towards college students and young adults. And then finally, we have yoga at the temple, second and fourth Monday, and this is still via Zoom. And it's from 7 to 8 p.m. on the second and fourth Mondays. All right, and that concludes service for today. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us again. And about 5 minutes after we close out here, we will have our Dharma reflection session with Reverend Umezu. All right, have a great rest of your weekend, and and take care and be safe. Thank you.
Namandala.